The organizations represented today include the American Association of University Women, Minneapolis and Minnesota, the Center on Women in Public Policy, DFL Feminist Caucus, Education Minnesota, Eldernomics, Gray Panthers of Minnesota, League of Women Voters Minnesota, Meta 5 Displaced Homemakers, the Association of Family and Consumer Sciences, Minnesota Business Women, the Minnesota Coalition for Battered Women, NARAL Pro-Choice Minnesota, the National Council of Jewish Women, Old Lesbians Organizing for Change, Outfront Minnesota, Pro-Choice Resources, the St. Cloud State University Women's Resource Center, Tubman, U.S. Women Connect, Wayside House, Women Venture, Women's Club of Minneapolis, Women's Environmental Institute, the Women's Initiative for Self-Empowerment, and the YWCA of Minneapolis. As the largest statewide network of organizations serving women and girls in the country, we're here today to say that our elected officials must consider the unique role women play in the health of Minnesota's economy as they work toward a balanced solution to this year's state budget. Earlier today, we met with legislators and elected officials to deliver a 23-point legislative platform that we believe will improve the economic well-being of women and girls in Minnesota. Many of these issues might be surprising because they're not often considered economic issues. However, they are necessary for improving the self-sufficiency, accessibility, and options for women in Minnesota to have a better life. A number of these issues are already priorities for the governor and the legislature, and we applaud them for supporting those issues. We also encourage them to consider and defend all of the issues outlined in our statement as they shape budget policies this legislative session. We ask them to consider the disproportionate effect that the struggling economy has on women while passing budget proposals. Women have a much larger influence on our state and country's economy than many think. The Federal Reserve reports that women control 51.3% of the wealth in the United States. They are responsible for 83% of all consumer purchases, and research from the Women's Foundation of Minnesota shows that women make up the majority of Minnesota's workforce. In addition, 80% of Native American and African American working women with children in Minnesota earn the majority of their family's income. These facts exemplify that when it comes to Minnesota's economic health, women are the canary in the coal mine. When women suffer poverty at higher rates than men, the economy as a whole suffers. When state and county safety nets are severely cut or abolished, women are disproportionately harmed and our state's economy suffers. We are pleased to note that the opposite is also true. When women thrive, the entire community thrives. So we ask that our elected officials help Minnesota's women thrive and help all of us thrive. Here to illustrate this point is Jen Peterson, mother of 5, and Cottage Grove City Councilwoman. Her story speaks to our call to improve the economic well-being of Minnesota's women.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Especially thank you to the Minnesota Women's Consortium for giving me this opportunity to talk to you all. I'll address some issues that affected me and my family over the last 23 years, as well as millions of other families across the state. I'm not going to give you a bunch of statistics, as those can be found elsewhere. I'm going to share a few little pieces of my own story of going from being homeless, divorced single mother, dependent on welfare, to being a college graduate, a taxpayer, a homeowner, a volunteer, an advocate, and a public servant. Back in late 1989, my sometimes violent marriage took another turn for the worse. I had a tough decision to make about my future. Would I stay with my abusive husband, Robert, who was the father of the 3 children we had at the time, or attempt to leave? I knew that the kids would be better off financially if I stayed, but I couldn't take the abuse anymore. I chose my physical safety over our financial security. I took the kids and we left. Being a victim of domestic violence, I was able to get free legal services to start the divorce process. I also learned about the variety of other services and programs that I could use to help my family. I'll mention them briefly first, then a little on how many of them helped us throughout the years. AFDC, now known as MFIP, medical assistance, food stamps, WIC, free and reduced school lunch meals, or school meals, community food shelves, the STRIDE program, Pell Grants, Pell Grants, Transitional Supportive Housing, Section 8 Assistance, Child Care Assistance, Child Support Enforcement, Emergency Assistance, Energy Assistance, and the Head Start Preschool Program. In all honesty, had these supports not been available, it's likely that I would have remained in that dangerous marriage. All of the services are things that are part of the platform that the Minnesota Women's Consortium and all these women support. Soon after I left Robert, I had the opportunity to make a big difference in our future, college. Paid for by grants and scholarships. So for the next 2 years, I was a full-time student and a mother at St. Kate's. I was going for my associate degree in occupational therapy assistant program. I benefited greatly pretty much throughout that time with the services that I mentioned. During my college years, I was living at the Passage Community Supportive Transitional Housing Program. It was for single mothers who were getting on their feet. It was on the edge of downtown Minneapolis in a pretty rough neighborhood, but it offered subsidized rent, on-site subsidized childcare, and many other supports. I really see this program as key to my success in graduating from college. Upon graduating in '92, I had 4 children under the age of 8. Yes, I ended up pregnant with the 4th child by Robert before the divorce was final. Just how that happened is another story, and I won't get into details now. Fortunately, I was awarded a Section 8 certificate to take with me after moving out of Passages. Section 8 was something that proved to be very helpful over the next several years as I continued to make a better life for my family. After graduating and moving to Eden, I started working in a nursing home part-time. Before long, I had moved on to another nursing home job in Woodbury that offered a few more hours. In '94, I moved to a new apartment in Cottage Grove to be closer to my job. As my hours and pay at work increased, many of the assistance benefits decreased. And by approximately 1995, I was working full-time and no longer getting any AFDC. I still had the child care subsidy, medical assistance, some limited food stamps, Section 8, and the free school lunches at school for the kids. Unfortunately, the child support my now ex-husband was ordered to pay was hit or miss at best. It wasn't something I could count on. It would come one month, then not for a few. At times, I went for a year or more without any support. I pushed on to do my part, though, by working hard. Robert worked equally hard at avoiding paying the support by working under the table. In '96, I met Tony, who I would marry in '97. By that point, child support enforcement caught up to Robert, and the payments were regular. What a difference that made. Both Tony and I were working full-time. Things were good. This was when most of the forms of public assistance stopped, except for the medical assistance for the 4 kids, and the reduced cost of school lunches. We actually bought a home in Cottage Grove in '98, and I got pregnant with my 5th child. Toward the last couple months of the pregnancy, things went bad. I ended up hospitalized with pregnancy complications and then sent home for bed rest until delivery. Then Tony hurt his back and needed surgery. Both of us were unable to work for several weeks. During that time, we relied upon our local food shelf for help. I also got back on WIC for the rest of the pregnancy. WIC continued to help us out until my youngest daughter was about 5. Tony had gotten back to work as soon as he could, but the damage was done. We had fallen behind and were really struggling to catch up. Child support got a bit irregular again. I tried to go back to work after our daughter was born, but the full-time work was with the newborn and 4 other kids to care for was a bit much. I was exhausted. So I resigned that job and stayed home and provided daycare for a friend for a little bit of money. We got some help from Washington County for emergency assistance, energy assistance, and a program to make some improvements to our home related to safety and energy conservation. It was a tough year, but we made it through with the supports that I mentioned. Now jump forward a bit to 2009 when Robert died suddenly. It was just a month after our youngest son finished high school, and so the child support order for current support ended. The enforcement never did get any better over the years. He owed me just over $116,000 in unpaid child support when he died. That's a whole lot of money that I will not now ever be able to collect. I know that our lives could have been much easier had child support enforcement been able to collect that support over the many years that it accumulated. Likewise, we would have been much less dependent on the many services and programs that I mentioned today. Fast forward to now. Life is good. Despite some really tough times, we were all doing okay. The kids are mostly pretty grown up and doing very well. My eldest daughter is married with 2 babies. All 3 sons are working. 2 of them are going to college. One is in the union and one is in the military. My youngest daughter is a straight A student in middle school and has already set her sights on St. Kate's. I'm very proud and happy as a mother and grandma. I'm currently a Cottage Grove City Council member in my 2nd term. My husband Tony is amazing. He stuck with us through this all. Aside from being a council member, I have 2 other part-time jobs. Tony also has 2 jobs after having been laid off his really good job he had at the start of the recession. As a council member, I serve and volunteer much of my time with nonprofits that serve people in poverty or are homeless. I sit on a couple Washington County committees that deal with the issues of affordable housing and homelessness. Through this work, I hear many stories, very much like my own, and even worse. I am asking that our legislators make every effort to not only continue funding, but increase funding for the services and programs that I have mentioned. Now is not the time to make the cuts. There are so many more struggling families out there, just like mine. The economy is just starting to recover, and program cuts that serve so many more who are hurting the worst will ultimately hurt us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for sharing your story.